Welcome to Truth is Here. Today is the 1st of March 2020 and I'm Mobina Hashmi. This picture that you've seen today before yourselves was actually put onto Truth is Here going back a few years ago. It's exactly the same picture, and once again I've covered up some of the critical parts of the picture, so you can only see some of it. The thing that I want to share with yourselves today is that since 1998, I've told you this on my other videos, I've been a victim of lots of setups and persecution, discrimination and that kind of thing. So I've really effectively been on a treadmill since, continuously having to deal with assaults from the establishments here in the UK. Various organisations, NHS, employers, NHS doctors, private practitioners. My video just recently at the beginning of this month, last month, February 2020, today's the 1st of March as I said, will let you get an idea of the kind of things that I have to deal with, the kind of stunts. You can see that video where a dentist, a private practitioner, inserted 2 teeth in my mouth, which were both very much not in alignment with standardization for implants and their crowns in this country or anywhere else. No one pays £5,000 to have 2 teeth placed in their mouth with 2 ugly holes in them or 2 embossed circles in them. They're not actually holes in the sense that you can put your finger through them or stick a needle through them, but I don't know, they might be porous in that they allow things to get through, or but they are definitely unsightly and not in the agreement. I didn't accept having 2 abnormally looking crowns placed on my implants. So that was done in my face, literally in my mouth, by the private practitioner here, a dental surgeon in the Bristol area. And when I commented on this strange anomaly, his response was to say, hush. And I knew I wasn't really in a safe situation because it's not the first time. In fact, even now as I speak, I've had a cough for many, many years which was ignored, and only when an ethnic practitioner, a GP, joined the practice was I given medication that dealt with the immediate symptoms of my cough, a chronic cough that I've had for many years. Prior to that, the practitioners at my local GP practice did nothing about my cough. So I'm quite wary of that. And I've had other issues as well. My NHS employer, going back 2007 to 2007, arranged for me to be sent to occupational health and to see a psychiatrist when I complained about racism and discrimination. And they decided that I had some form of schizophrenia, paranoia, which thankfully was cleared by consultant psychiatrists. Later on, this misdiagnosis was corrected by other authorities, other psychiatrists, but it hasn't put an end to the damages, which I'm still suffering from because I lost my job and my professional remits as a pharmacist. So there I was in this shocking situation which I'd been having threats about since 1998 and 1999 in West Wales General Hospital, where I was bullied by senior staff, CEO, the chief pharmacist, his 2 principal pharmacists, and any subordinate member of staff who was pretty much desperate enough or low enough to do as they were told and to join in. I had to listen to these kinds of comments to do with my health, that I was schizophrenic or I would be turned schizophrenic, and that's exactly what they tried to do later on in 2007 when they made up this concoction about my health, which has been proven to be a major concoction. Had it not been the case, I would not be able to do these videos, because a person suffering from schizophrenia for any amount of duration that amounts to several years, or even less than that, would not be able to do these videos. So that's already evidenced as being the case, and it's made me very unpopular with some types of healthcare practitioners who, I don't know, out of loyalty to the Royal Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain and their sister organisation that's succeeded them, the General Pharmaceutical Council, out of loyalty to these bodies and maybe their colleagues who agreed to label me with this condition, they have not been forthcoming in putting an abrupt ending to this misdiagnosis. My GP practices, my GPs at the GP practice, and any other GP practices that I've been to, have not been forthcoming in saying, Robina, your life is wasting away with this misdiagnosis. You clearly can't have this condition, and nobody reserves the right to insist on any other sister condition, mental health condition, in order to cover themselves up. Why should they be given that liberty? Surely your evidence is enough. You're not allowed to have a lawyer. The police have lied about you. They've given you false information about yourself. All the employers who've been involved, under instruction from, I don't know, it seemed the Royal Society and the GPHC, all these employers, they've gone along with the instruction and really shortchanged you, even though the evidence clearly suggests that you can't be suffering from a severe mental health condition. At the very most, you have, understandably, some stress-related illness, which is aggravated by being treated differently from other people, and not being allowed to work, not being allowed just to have a normal life without being harassed wherever you go. You see, so these processes have really damaged my life. And naturally, I had nowhere to go other than to start praying. And I did that. I prayed to God for help. And something came to me, some kind of guidance, you could say, a sign from God, which is one of the projects that I'm working on. This front cover is actually to share that information with everyone in the world. But it seems to me that envious parties have come to learn about this front cover and have themselves tried to portray themselves as the recipients of this piece of knowledge in order to make themselves more famous, perhaps more prosperous, without feeling any guilt or embarrassment at the very notion of trying to steal something from somebody else whose situation is dire, and they've been blessed enough to have something throughout all this suffering. I'm aware, what I'm actually trying to share here with you, with all of you, is that there are parties who are trying to steal this discovery from myself and make themselves out to be the actual recipients, which is really tantamount to thieves, being thieves, and stealing somebody else's work, their discovery, their product. I find that really disgusting, and I would like you all to know that such individuals were not granted any of this information by myself and have stolen it through some channel, which I again don't take responsibility for, because I've never actually shared this discovery even with my family. Such is my situation, that I'm always on a treadmill. Since 1998, I'm continuously being harassed by the UK establishments. I've just told you some of the stunts that were played against myself. The fact that the late Marwa Shabini's details match with that of my own will give you an idea as to how organised crime operates, and the kind of assaults myself and my family are dealing with. I've not shared this discovery with my family, so they can't say that your family gave it to us. If they did, if it did indeed come through them, then you should have declined and not said, then it's okay, isn't it? Because it didn't come through me, and that channel should not be defaulted upon to clear yourselves of theft. So I hope I've made it clear I'm not happy with individuals trying to make themselves famous or more prosperous on the efforts of somebody else. It just stinks. And such parties should really ask for forgiveness, if not directly, of Allah, of God Himself, and withdraw their efforts to try and make themselves other than what they really are. I've got lots of topics that I need to share with yourselves. One of them is that my family are really targeted, and I really do get annoyed with my family, but you've got to realise all those murdered women share my details, so my family are also being targeted more than anyone else. My nieces, my nephews, they've been picked on. My brothers, my sister, and other family members. I can't present the evidence here, but you should see for yourselves that that's the case. And you should also ask yourself the question, why on earth would they do that? Why would they be so obsessed with your family? That's something else I'm coming on to. I've been pretty vocal about the fact that I've been harassed, and I've even presented the evidence that I did, in fact, have to deal with a lot of harassment. The murdered women, that's just some of the examples that backs up my evidence. Take a look at this. This offer was made to me in 1997, 6th of October 1997. So as you can see, I really did do my pre-registration training in a hospital setting in West Wales, and I didn't make that up. Neither did I make up the fact that I was bullied. Look at that. This wasn't actually given to me when I commenced employment, and was only placed in my tray at work, my post tray, on the 11th of March 1909, okay, after I'd complained. Thankfully, somebody was sympathetic and understanding, and could see what I was complaining about. Have a look at that: bullying and harassment of staff, Carmarthen and District NHS Trust. It's not surprising that this act was passed about then, the Public Disclosure Act, which outlines my situation word for word, a trainee at an NHS hospital. Okay, there's further details elaborating the Disclosure Act, even the date when it received royal assent on the 2nd of July 1998. That's when it actually received, as I said, royal assent, but it only became active, if you like, on the 2nd of July 1999, which happens to be the same day or date that I passed my pre-registration examination, or actually, well, yeah, passed it, because that's when I sat the examination. Okay, so if you catch the drift of what I'm saying that I am harassed from 1998, beginning of August, roughly 1998, to the end of July 1999. And in 1998, they've actually got a law that covers my situation, but it only becomes enforced on the day I pass my exams, July 1999, the 2nd of July. There's 2nd of July 1998, royal assent, and then it goes into enforcement on the 2nd of July 1999. It protects employees who make disclosures of certain types of information, okay, including evidence of illegal activity, etc., etc. That is exactly what happened to me. It describes how people can become victimized because of this penalizing for having spoken up. That is exactly what happened to me, and the shocking thing is it's continued to happen to me since 1998. Where are we now? 2020. That's 22 years of continuously being on a treadmill and being threatened wherever you go by the government themselves, the police, the NHS employers, NHS GPs, dentists. You've seen the teeth in my mouth. How could that be other than medical negligence with intent to harass or harm? I don't want to go too much into the intentions of the private dental surgeon, but it's clear that he's conformed to instruction here, and doesn't have any issues harassing me like that because of the individuals instructing him, or the network that he's quite happily gone along with. This is probably the biggest shocker for everyone, and I really think people should know about this. In 1998 and 1999, when I did my training, I remember hearing rumours from the mouths of people at the Trust that I would be famous. They didn't, well, one or two people did say it directly in my face, but it was kind of said hush-hush as well. And then I also heard this same comment being made to me by the Egyptian cleric himself. He directly addressed me, giving me a similar message. And then one of his disciples, his key disciple in the Bristol area, telephoned me in about 2000 and told me that the Egyptian cleric had telephoned her and described a female in the Bristol area, and she described my situation in Carmarthen and other things to do with myself, and said that he'd said this female is going to be really big. She's really, really big. Okay, now that message had been given to me even earlier on, going back to when I was in university, and I'd kind of shrugged it aside because I thought, come on, you know, I don't want to come across as somebody who's suffering from delusions, which is what they finally did say about me, that I was suffering from delusions. But you've got to look at the evidence. If we look at objective evidence, scientifically, or I mean, even the medical evidence, which is based on scientific evidence, is pointing in a direction of myself being the victim of huge assaults and organised crime. I mean, you can't have somebody being called schizophrenic if they've just made breakfast for their mother. Yeah, and I regularly do things like that. So schizophrenia has to be clearly defined, and it shouldn't be redefined to fulfil the objectives of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, the General Pharmaceutical Council, and their buddies at NHS trusts and other agencies who have agreed to do their dirty work for them, including the Egyptian cleric and his wife. I'm going to clear up the issue to do with myself and Mr. Egyptian cleric and his wife, because I think that needs clearing up. Let me just say to you very briefly, there is a lot of hearsay that he and I had some kind of a romance between us. That is not really true. Mr. Egyptian cleric had real romances with other females. Mine and his didn't actually ever come to anything whatsoever. It was hardly a question put to me or to him. But through rumours, I'd realised that he was interested in me. And in fact, the story is far more insidious and far more sinister, which is why I'm sharing 9/11 with yourselves. I would just like you to know that there is nothing between he and I. We never met up alone, even. So there couldn't have been anything like that. I never agreed to marry him. I never wanted to marry him. I wanted to know my situation to do with all of this. And he and his wife turned it into something romantic because they wanted to get some kind of control over myself. And these kind of strategies were employed, where laws and acts were adjusted to somehow corner me. This stunt is the most shocking in terms of its scale and its being known across the globe by everyone. There's nobody who doesn't know about 9/11 and the Twin Towers and the World Trade Center. So this one I just want to highlight here, what my concerns are. Mr. Egyptian cleric and his wife were making inquiries from a local astrologer here in the Bristol area, a Muslim female, who actually was somebody who'd converted to Islam, or reverted to Islam, depending on how you like to express when somebody becomes a Muslim. Okay, so she, being a professional astrologer, had a conversation with them over the phone. I got to find out about it sometime after. Somebody told me, oh, he was inquiring about your birthday from Lady X in Bristol. My birthday is 9/11. I didn't think anything of it at the time. But I of course, I was a little taken aback when I thought, how comes he takes so much interest in me and his wife as well? I knew she had an interest in star signs, but I didn't realise how serious it was. So there was this interest in my birthday, my birth date, and there was also interest in other aspects of my life, which Mr. Egyptian Cleric had somehow gotten hold of through other sources, the NHS being one of them. So contrary to the rumours, it was Mr. Egyptian Cleric and his wife who were completely and utterly obsessed with myself. I was interested in Mr. Egyptian Cleric enlightening me on Islam, because he posed as some kind of a teacher, a religious instructor. I was interested in getting to the bottom of all of this. But how was he ever going to share this with me when he himself was more interested in cornering me and having some control over me, or absolute control over me, which thankfully he never will, and he never has. Just to kind of enlighten you a little bit more on the information here. When Mr. Egyptian Cleric and I last saw each other, it was in 2001 August, right? And the following month, 2001 September 9/11, this event took place. Mr. Egyptian Cleric claims that he is a Sayyid, which most commonly is understood to be a direct descendant in Islamic history, in Islamic sort of tradition. The title Sayyid usually means that you are a direct descendant of the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace and blessings of Allah upon him. And Mr. Muhammad Atta, the alleged pilot of one of the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center and the Twin Towers, was in fact a Sayyid from his name. You can see that. And he is of Egyptian descent. Isn't that interesting? You could say, perhaps you could say this, that many people are Egyptian, and if he's a direct descendant, so what? But if you're saying that, you've got to take the whole big picture into account as well. This man, Muhammad Atta al-Sayyid, has a sister who has the first and surname of Mr. Egyptian Cleric's wife. He has a sister called Azza and a sister called Muna. And the surname of both these females, like their brother, they share the same surname, is actually not Atta, if we're completely honest, although that is one of his names. He's in fact a direct descendant, so his surname or his family best descriptor would be Al-Sayyid, Azza Al-Sayyid, or yes, Azza Al-Sayyid, and there's more than one way of pronouncing that title, that surname. Sayyid, Syed, Sayyid, Said, Sayyid. These are all really pronunciations of the same word, Sayyid, Al-Sayyid, whether you put Al in front or not. I've tried to kind of explain that. Al or Al can be added as a prefix to the name Al-Sayyid. Right? The pilot, therefore, is Egyptian, and his sisters are Egyptian too. And he's a direct descendant, and his sister's name is the same first and surname as the Egyptian cleric's wife. What a coincidence. And it's my birthday. 9/11 is my birthday. On top of that, the couple are researching my birthday and telling people that Mobina is going to be very, very big. She's huge. On top of that, they disappear to Washington, D.C., mysteriously leaving this country, telling only a few people, and disappear to go to Washington, D.C. in the same year, roughly, in about 2001. Isn't that strange? Having researched my birthday, which is 9/11. Well, this kind of evidence, all of you should realise that there are too many coincidences. Marwa Shabini's details, Nahid Al-Mania's details both match myself and each other. The 32-year-old pharmacist stabbed to death in the courtrooms of Germany. Myself working in West Wales General Hospital. A rumour being in circulation that I was going to be famous. The knife being found in the paediatric ward door where the tutor herself worked. Myself not being allowed anywhere near there because they made me feel like I was dangerous. I was the psychopath. And yet there was a psychopath let loose in the hospital at the same time. I mean, where was all of this going? And then in about 2000, I locumed as a pharmacist in the Bristol area for Pharmacy Plus in one of the shops in Avonmouth. And I remember a man walking into the shop, coming over to me, opening up his briefcase, which was full of lots of knives, and asking me, would you like one? I remember him doing that and feeling very uncomfortable and saying to him, no thank you, the butcher is next door. The same thing happens in between 2005 and 2007 when I finally accept to work in a hospital pharmacy and actually take up a post in Barnsley. The same thing happens. I am so badly racially abused wherever I go, discriminated against. The same tactics being used that the pre-registration tutor used against me in Carmarthen between 98 and 99, now being used against me in the department where I'm really treated very differently to other members of staff. And then being told that I'm suffering from some kind of very severe mental health illness, which is actually degenerative, meaning you get worse over time, and you shouldn't be able to cope for any length of time, certainly not 12 to 13 years between like 2007 and now, which is like 13 years now. No medication ever, no antipsychotics whatsoever in my entire life. A person would be dead. Really, they would be dead if they hadn't taken any treatment, any medical treatment. In schizophrenia, the first line of therapy is only medication. No amount of counselling can reduce or cure you from this condition. So I can't be in that category. And they've conveniently put psychopath there as well, going back to Carmarthen Hospital just to cover themselves in the event that it becomes more obvious what they've been doing all these years. I mentioned the dead women, and I feel very sad for them and their families. Nahid Al-Mania, Marwa Shabini, Joanna Yates. That's another lady whose details match all of my own. And it needs to be highlighted that her death too was organised. It's impossible for all these events to kind of just be coincidental, including this 9/11 thing. The Egyptian cleric and his wife disappearing to Washington DC, announcing that I'm going to be famous. There also being a rumour about the couple being connected to very powerful agencies and having a plan or doing something, working on something. For his wife to be an economist, doing a PhD at one of the world's most prestigious universities, Cambridge. You can see the obvious link between Cambridge University and economics PhD and the World Trade Center and the Twin Towers. Them forecasting that I was going to be famous, my birthday, 9/11. It just it's too organized. It's too much. Even their names matching, for goodness sake. I can't say anything other than they were involved in the whole disaster, the whole ordeal. Flight 11 crashing into the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center, or 9/11. If that isn't planned, I don't know what is. Mind you, I am pooling my research results together and presenting you not just one piece of evidence. This on its own could be seen as a coincidence, but if we were to run a statistical analysis on all these events being a coincidence, it would really be unlikely, highly unlikely, and therefore an investigation and an inquiry are really necessary, because when evidence like this is all adding up, it's actually not permissible to ignore evidence-based research. Anyway, that's all for now. That's all for today. Today is the 1st of March 2020, and I'm Mobina Hashmi. I hope you review this evidence and give it some thought. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.